Hello, everyone. I'm Tharwat Mansour. I'm a board member in the Franco-British Network. The Franco-British Network is a non-profit organization in France with the objective of helping British people resident in France or planning to move in the near future and helping them overcoming their daily challenges. Today, I'm doing a chat FVN, and it's a very important topic. I know many of our followers requested this, and the topic is about inheritance law in France. And for this, I'm having with me Mr. Christophe Dutertre. Thankfully, we're very glad to have you with us, Mr. Christophe.
Yep.
Welcome to this chat.
Welcome. Thank you very much.
Christophe is a lawyer with a diploma as notaire practicing in UK. He also has a diploma in European notarial law, and he has a STAB certificate in international succession and probate. So he's going to give us very valuable information today about this topic. We start with the overall general question, Christophe. Now we're going to move to the questions that were sent by followers. Can we use English inheritance law if we specify how the will is written?
You can. So if you want to write a will, you can put in your will that you would like English law to apply.
Mm-hmm.
So you can do that. Obviously, with everything that we said, the question is whether English law will apply.
Mm-hmm.
If you have children, whether common children or children from previous marriages, and the relationship is, I will use the word excellent, and you know they are never going to challenge anything, fine. In that case, you can choose English law if they're all in agreement that everything should pass to the surviving spouse, for example, or if maybe from all the children, one has more financial difficulties than the other and you would like to give him a little bit more. Yes, you can. You put that in your will, maybe to change the rules and change the forced heirship. But the key element to choose English law in a will is to make sure that the relationship is good with the people who can claim a share or challenge the will, i.e. the children.
Mm-hmm.
And once you've done that, I will always say to the clients, you would like English law to apply because in England, that's what you will do. So in England, you would transfer everything to the surviving spouse and the children will inherit after the second death. Fine. In England, you've got a nice tax ratio that you can transport after the second death and you double it under condition, I think. In France, it's not the case. If a child doesn't inherit after the first death, after his first parent's death, the 100,000 euros is lost. Mm-hmm. So then after the second death, you got 100% of the estate and only 100,000 euros per child. Again, if you got several children, that's fine. You might actually absorb the value of your estate. If you only have one child, they will end up paying tax.
Mm.
And sometimes paying tax means they have to sell a property that they don't want to sell because they don't have the money to pay. So before you choose English law, again, it's to make sure that is what you want. It's what are you trying to achieve? Do you really want to protect the surviving spouse and protect the surviving spouse maybe because if one of us die, we're not going to stay in France. In that case, fine. Just choose English law. As long as the children are happy, the surviving spouse will inherit the estate. You sell up, you go back to England, and all your estate will be governed by English law. So you don't have to involve the children. But if your aim is to stay in France, then maybe there are some other options than choosing English law, because it may not be the best option for you as a surviving spouse and also for the children.
Okay.
So yes, you can choose English law in a will, but sometimes it's not the best option.
Got you.
So it's really to discuss with the client. And it's per case. We see on social media, people say, well, I want to give everything to my spouse and the children after the second death. Choose English law, make a will, choose English law. I would say, okay, that's not bad. Is that really what you want? Think about inheritance law, fine, but also think about inheritance tax. Because a lot of people think about the law and forget about the tax.
Mm-hmm.
And the tax is also a key element, I think. So I persuaded a lot of clients to say, we would like everything to pass to each other and then to our common children after the second death. Okay, what is the value of your estate? How many children do you have? And in my mind, the first question I ask myself is, are the children going to pay tax after the second death? If so, are they happy with that? If not, what can we do? So again, you adapt the law to each situation.
Okay. Can my will be administered according to English law? I think it's the same, right? You just
It
mentioned.
is the same, and again, I would say it's very difficult. If you have a will and you would like English law to apply, means you have to follow the English procedure of probate. It's difficult, and you've got a lot of different opinions, and it's really, I would say, you've got the theory, which is the position sometimes of what we call the credon, which is the organization helping French notaires when they are stuck with a question. It's like a helpline, basically. And the credon, they've got quite a huge power, and they are very respected in France for their opinions. The credon would say, if you want to apply English law, then you need to follow the English procedure. If you make a will, then you have to go through the probate in England, obtain a grant of probate. But sometimes a lot of people will have a will made under English law, so we like English law to apply. They have absolutely nothing in England, not even a bank account. Some people, they move to France, they haven't got any bank account in England anymore. How are you going to obtain a grant of probate in England if you don't have any assets in England? Again, by experience, a lot of people try, and the probate registry say, well, you don't have anything in England. We don't want to. We don't want to waste our time to grant a probate for nothing, because there is absolutely nothing in England. And you go around the circle. You have a notaire who say, okay, English law. Oh, I'm not sure what do I need to do? Let's ask the credon. The credon will say, it's normal in theory, well, I would like you to ask the client to get a grant of probate. The client will ask for a grant of probate. You can't obtain the grant of probate. What do you do? A notaire will say, I'm not doing anything until I've got that document. Yeah, but I can't obtain it. Yeah, but I'm not doing anything until I've got it. So you get stuck by the theory. And in practice, some notaires, not all of them, but you try to adapt. And again, it's having a consultation and probably some like a disclaimer. Some notaire will say, okay, we want to apply English law. So we are going to apply English law for the devolution of the succession. So how the succession should be devolved to the estate, to the heirs, surviving spouse only. But we are still going to follow French law to actually deal with the procedure. We're not going to wait for a grant of probate that we can't obtain. And some notaire put in their deeds, the client decided to apply English law, but because it's difficult and we cannot obtain a grant of probate, for the devolution purposes, we are going to apply English law, but then we are going to follow the process of French law to distribute the estate and register everything in France. Is it legal? Some notaires do it. They would not do it if they felt it was not legal. If you can't obtain a document, then you have to adapt to the situation. So I'm not saying that it's what should be done, because if you follow the theory, you should obtain a grant of probate. But if you can't obtain a grant of probate, at some stage, you need to find a solution. Otherwise, you are stuck with a succession for years. In a very simple case where you've got a spouse and 2 children, for example, and the notaire will refuse to deal with the estate because he doesn't have a document that was recommended to him. So it's to see how to adapt it. I know there are several credons in France dealing with different parts of France. There is one credon who will be very strict to say, you need to obtain that document and full stop. There's another credon who will be a bit more flexible. So again, the credon, they should have a common policy, but in several occasions, they say, well, try to do this, have like a disclaimer, put a little expose in your deed to explain why you can't obtain a grant of probate, and that should be okay. It's again case by case, but in theory, if you want to administrate your estate under English law, you can, providing that you can, in a way that you can obtain a grant of probate. So yes, not be a problem.
I made a will here in France before Brexit using British law. Is that will still valid today?
Yes. Wales, again, that's a very common question. A lot of people think that after Brexit, everything that was made in England is invalid. They really, because of Brexit, they think that they are basically the Brexit push a reset button on everything they did before. Wales, English Wales are valid in France. They are valid in a way that we recognize English will in France, whether it was made before Brexit or after Brexit. What you need to adapt, nothing to do with Brexit, but it's more with the European succession law and the recent legislation that came into force in 2021. Can we execute the will? The will is valid in the way it was drafted, signed. It will be valid, recognized in France. It's the content of the will. Can we execute the full content of the will, i.e., a will disinheriting children? Can we do that? So, validity of the will you've got, is the will valid in a way that has it been signed and drafted to be recognized in a country? Usually 99% of the case, yes. Can I execute that will? Can I execute the provision of the will? That's where I would say, I'm not going to say it's not valid, but it may not be executed because of the recent legislation.
Okay.
So it's something which is quite different. I also have something I like to point out because it's common. You've got a British citizen living in France making a will. In France, you make a will. I will say most of the time, I will ask my clients, can you handwrite your will? When they are simple, I say you can handwrite your will. When they are a little bit complex, maybe you get at an age where, like me, you can't write because you are used to computer and your handwriting is terrible. Fine, I will print the document. You sign it in the presence of 2 witnesses, which is the way you would do it in England. And you've got some notaires in France who will say, oh, the will you drafted is invalid for your client because it's not handwritten. And I say, well, can you provide an explanation why it's invalid? Because it's not handwritten by the client, so it's not a French will, it's not valid in France, I can't execute it. What you need to remember, and again, nothing to do with Brexit, France, like the UK, they signed and they ratified the Hague Convention dated the 5th of October 1961, which basically provide that a will is valid in most any circumstances. So a will signed in France by 2 British nationals, the way they would do it in England, i.e. a Word document just signed with 2 witnesses, is valid in France. Why? Because France ratified the convention and England ratified the convention as well. And a lot of notaires don't seem, not all of them, but quite a few don't seem to understand that an English will made the English way in France is valid. And it's valid. Why? Because you've got the Hague Convention. So something to point out, because a lot of clients came back to me when I draft their wills and they say, oh, I'm not going to register the will with you. I'll bring it to my notaire. And they come back to me later to say, well, my notaire said my will is invalid because it's not handwritten. I said, well, no. And I said, if you look at the top of your will, there is a sentence saying the will complies with the Hague Convention and is valid under the Hague Convention. So it's also something not to be confused. You can have a will handwritten, the way we do it in France, but you can also, if for some people they say, oh, I'm dyslexic, I can't handwrite because I've got problems with my hands. Fine, I will just ask you to sign it in the presence of 2 witnesses, and it's valid. So it's just something to mention because it's quite important, maybe for some of our members who feel that if they don't handwrite their will, it will be invalid.
What is best making a French will or a British will regarding property in France?
I would say if you have a property in France, to me, I would say you should make a French will. But you can make a French will and elect English law.
Mhm.
So you can have a French will written in French and in English, and you can elect English law if you want to change the distribution of the estate and you don't want, excuse me, French law to apply. If you are in France, I always say to my client or when I've got an inquiry, I live in France. Do I need a French will or shall I have an English will? The question is, do you still have assets in England? What kind of assets do you have in England? Do you have 10 properties, bonds, and basically a large estate in England? In that case, yeah, maybe I would suggest that you have an English will made under English law with an English solicitor if you want to create some specific clauses regarding all this investment. And it might be easier sometimes if you've got several properties to get a grant of probate with an English will. If you have a property in England or if you have a bank account, you can include those assets in your French will and you can execute a French will in England. Again, there are some formalities to carry out with the probate registry, but a French will in England is valid. And it's valid why? Because England ratified the Hague Convention. And again, something a lot of solicitors seems to forget, even the probate registry, which had several cases where the probate registry say, oh, a handwritten will, we are not really familiar with that. Is it valid? Well, it's valid because you, England, you ratified the convention. So yes, it's valid. Mm-hmm. And with an affidavit of law, they apply the French will and they provide a grant of probate. So just a couple of formalities. If you are in France and you have a French property, I would say try to go for a French will. That would be easier for a French notaire. Have a legal advisor to draft a will made under French law, English law. It's entirely up to you. But the way you would draft the will, make it easier for a notaire to understand what you want to do. And the reason is when you are in England, when you draft an English will, most of the time you've got the word executor and trustees. And I transfer everything to my trustees upon trust. And as soon as you create a trust, and if you have an English will, it will be in English. And sometimes the translation, I often see a translation which are not accurate, which will completely mislead a notaire as to who should inherit the estate. Because you've got this mention of trustees, which is unknown in France. So again, it's case by case. But a French property, if you're a French resident, French property, limited assets in England, I would probably advise a French will.
Clear enough. We are British citizens, French residents. If no significant part of our state is outside France, so they don't have much outside France, and we are happy to have it divided between our children in the UK, do we actually need a will? So they're French resident, British citizen.
So French resident, British citizen, children living in the UK, do we need a will? What do you want to do with your estate? Option one, children who are common children. If you're happy for the children to inherit your respective estate, I would say in theory, you probably don't need a will because we will apply French law. French law, the surviving spouse benefit from a life interest or a quarter share of the estate, usually the life interest, and you transfer the estate to the children. And after the second death, the other half will pass to the children. I would say in theory, you don't really need a will. But if you remember at the beginning of this podcast, I said that a will is often recommended to avoid any confusion for the notaire. And I always ask the client, I'm often honest with them. I say, okay, in your case, well, basically you don't need a will because French law will do the job. But you are British, you are in France. You may be in a part of France where notaires are not very familiar with British citizens. They don't really know how to deal with international estate. And even the simplest estate, they may not know what to do. Because you are British, are they going to ask for English law to apply? Are they going to ask you many questions before opening a file? Sometimes, even if it's to confirm what French law says, at least as a British citizen, I am British, I live in France, I make a French will. I'm happy for French law to apply. I'm happy for my spouse to have a life interest. I'm happy for my share of the estate to pass to my children. Sometimes just to put that in writing, stop any confusion or any question for a notaire. I've got a will. They are British. They want to follow French law. Fine. Thank you very much. That's easy. And that's why I say to my client, yes, you can just leave things as they are because you don't necessarily need a will. But sometimes just for the practicality, to ease the work of a notaire, just have a will. Just have a will. At least it's there and you know what you want and the notaire knows what you want. And there is no confusion at all. And that's why some clients will say, we'll leave it as it is. Fine. It's fine. Some other will say, well, actually, yes, maybe just to put it in writing, just to confirm that that's what we want. And that's what's going to happen. And it's easy. And the notaire will say, okay, that's fine. I know what I need to do. I just need to apply the will. They are British. They didn't want English law to apply. They just want French law to apply. And again, sometimes you say, oh, do I need a will? Did you already have a will? Some clients say, oh, yeah, we made a will back in the 80s or in the 70s. It happens. I don't know where it is. I don't know what it says. Do I need a will now? Well, you still have a will in place. Unless you are 100% sure that we can't find it. But you never know. It may come up at some point. So have something to revoke anything you made before, whether you remember or not. You've got something fresh.
Okay. So thank you so much, Christophe, for being with us today. Please stay tuned with us. Don't forget to subscribe below to get notified whenever there is a new Chat FBN session. Thank you so much again, Christophe. For our followers, stay tuned with us for more Chat FBN sessions throughout 2025. So stay tuned. Thank you so much. And to another Chat FBN session.